And welcome everybody to another episode of the Pulse of Fins Nation. I'm your host, Louis Sung, and I am joined by Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke, and Ron Caniff is here. He's hidden in the background for now while he gets Alfredo Arteaga into the show. We're having some link issues, but nevertheless, he'll be along in just a few minutes. So we're going to have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to review, once again, the Houston Texans game very briefly, talk about maybe some of the running game stuff, which is very convenient because we're also going to be talking about the Jonathan Taylor rumors that are going around. And I think we've already had a little bit of an off-camera discussion briefly where Ron is calling me on the carpet. We'll talk about it during the show. Then we'll
liar. You're a liar, man.
I'm not a liar. Like you're twisting my words. You're doing the first take thing where I say a thing and then Skip Bayless says, "You mean this?" No, I did not say that, Skip.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I had to pull some highlights.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and we'll get this started. But before we get started, we're going to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at U Brake Wheel Fix. U Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? U Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as U Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, U Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, U Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at ubrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at U Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to U Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. And this show is also brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. This is the new look PrizePicks.com. You can pick players from the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. It is up to you to decide. All you have to do is choose whether your chosen player will get more or less in their projected stat. They actually are celebrating their new look by giving you a free Dak Prescott square, which means all Dak Prescott has to do on September 10th when the Cowboys debut is he has to throw for 1 yard, and that square is already a win for you. So you just have to choose up to 1 or 2 or 3 more players, however many you want, in order to maximize your profit. And of course, today is also Taco Tuesday, which means there are discounted props all across the MLB, and so you can't miss out on any of these discounts. If you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan, you'd be crazy not to sign up at this point. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, so, and we are now joining by Alfredo Arteaga. He is here in the background. We have Ron Caniff, Chris Early, Weck, who is the moderator for OnlyFins. So by the way, only $3 a month. If you want to get in on that Discord server, you get information that you can't get anywhere else. So I just want to go ahead and mention this really quickly. There are a lot of people in here who are very pro Jonathan Taylor. I know that there are a lot of comments on my recent Fins Nation show where I basically told everybody the Dolphins should not go ahead and pursue Jonathan Taylor, and I gave all my reasons as to why. It has not stopped people from going in the comment section and saying that you are out of your mind. Why would you not want Jonathan Taylor? And I kind of feel like there are shades of the Dalvin Cook thing happening again, because there were a lot of people excited about Dalvin Cook, and I understand why. Dalvin Cook is a Pro Bowl running back in his own right, but we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. First, what I want to focus on here is I want to get the thoughts on the Houston Texans post-game stuff. What were our takeaways from that? Duke, I know that you had your own
thoughts. I want to talk about Jonathan Taylor.
We will talk about Jonathan Taylor. I promise you, it will lead into that.
Bury in the lead, man. Bury in the lead.
No, because if we do that for now, we're never going to get to the Texans. Ever.
That's the point. No, just kidding.
You told me.
Great game. We crushed it. Now let's talk about Jonathan Taylor and how we're going to go 17-0, people.
The Miami Dolphins ran almost 200 yards on the Houston Texans.
Could have been 300.
That was actually the part that Duke highlighted when he talked about his first.
Just think of it. If they had Jonathan Taylor, they would have ran for 400 yards on the Houston Texans.
I love being outnumbered. But anyway.
All for a fresh second-round pick and a couple extra million.
Hey, look, if you guys want to get into Jonathan Taylor, I already figured it out. So
now I know that Lewis wants to do Houston. Let's do Houston. It was a great game. There's things to talk about. We'll do it, but I'm telling you, man, at some point we're cutting it off and we're talking about Jonathan Taylor. Go for it, Lewis.
It doesn't
Continue on.
It doesn't have to be long, I promise. But anyway,
fine. Let's go.
The main thing that I wanted to highlight, and this is so ironic, is that the Miami Dolphins running game was absolutely awesome. It was that we were able to run almost 200 yards on a team that had actually stopped the Patriots from, what was it, Duke? They ran for like 75 yards total, 78 yards,
something like that,
like the entire game. And that's the New England Patriots, who in recent history anyway has had superior offensive lines to Miami across the board. So the fact that the Texans were able to hold them back with their own backups to only 78 yards rushing tells me that there might have been something there. And then here come the Miami Dolphins with their backups in. Yeah, Raheem Mostert got a few yards, 30 yards. Okay, fine. Savon Ahmed did most of the damage, and then Chris Brooks did the rest of it. So they absolutely torched that Texans defense, which had just stopped the Patriots 1 week earlier. So I'm looking at this running game, and I'm thinking to myself, why are we suddenly all over this Jonathan Taylor thing? The reason I was for Dalvin Cook to begin with was because you were not going to have to give up any assets. You did not have to give anything up to get Dalvin Cook. All you had to do was pay him. That's the end of the discussion. There's no give up a draft pick. There's no give up a player. There's no danger of not being able to go ahead and sign some of your key core players next offseason. So, and here's look, I have some guys in here on my side, I guess. Robert Trainer, Brooks is a keeper. Yeah, he is. But if you're gonna go out there and get Jonathan Taylor, you're basically saying, okay, well, one of these guys has got to go. I guess you can trade Jeff Wilson. Maybe the Colts will take him, I guess, if that's one discussion. But I just keep thinking to myself, why are we still doing this? We already proved that the Dolphins don't need a Pro Bowl running back to be able to run the football the way that we want them to. All of these rumors that we've heard about Dalvin Cook, their interest in Dalvin Cook. The Dolphins are the top team to get Dalvin Cook. They're so interested. They're dying to get their hands on him. And at the end of the day, they offered him what, $4 million tops?
We actually have no idea what they.
No, we have no idea. But obviously, it was an offer so low. It was so low that they decided that he went to the Jets.
But they did try to trade for him during the draft.
Before we drafted A-Chain.
Right, but that was probably on their terms, trying to dump a salary. Okay, so
right.
You guys wanted to talk about the Houston Texans. I got something about the Houston Texans if you want to hear it.
Go for it. I mean,
Jonathan Taylor in 5 games averages 125 yards a game against them, and two touchdowns per game. He's also 4-0 against them with one tie. He actually had a tie in a game he ran for 161 yards in. So
this is gonna be like when me and Bob talked about fantasy football till Lewis quit.
Oh, he had 7 touchdowns in the 4 games against the Texans.
Go ahead.
Good.
Talk about Houston, Lewis. Where I'm all.
He did have 1 fumble though. He had 1 fumble.
I mean, there's not much to talk about.
8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns in 4 games because he caught 1. So there you go.
Okay. You know what? Forget it. Jonathan Taylor. Go ahead, Ron. You go first. You guys are all so hyped up about this kid. Yet we're gonna give up a butt ton of assets to go get him. Go ahead.
Well, I'll segue from the Houston game where we ran over 200 yards. Clearly we're into running the ball this year. I mean, I won't say clearly. It's been 2 preseason games. I could tell in the practices we've been trying to run it better and run it more. Man, I mean, I just wasn't, I wasn't big on the Dalvin Cook thing. I just thought he would improve the room, but I didn't think it was a big enough deal to pay him a lot of money. And Jonathan Taylor's different. This guy was the number 1 back in the NFL just 2 years ago. Last year, the Colts were just a terrible team. And if this guy can be gotten for at least, I know I've been hearing 2 seconds. That's still a little rich for me, but maybe a second and a third next year or something, or whatever. I don't know what the compensation will be. I don't know that they can make it work, but I'm all for whatever it is they have to do besides giving up a first. But you got to extend Wilkins first. That has to be the number 1 priority above getting Taylor. And I understand, Alf, I get what you're going to say, that it means giving up on somebody we were going to keep in the coming years, or somebody we were going to extend, or a contract that we're just going to lose somebody. But man, we've been Dolphins fans for how long? Windows like this don't open up very often. They close. Whether you sign Jonathan Taylor or not, this window's going to close in a year or two. Make it work. Get him on the team. Let's try and win a Super Bowl. That's my thoughts on it. I think he changes the equation much more than Dalvin Cook did. Much more. Anybody else wants to go for it.
Yeah, if you look on Spotrac, okay, and you look at their yearly expenditures, okay, you could go to 2025. Now, can they trade Jonathan Taylor and keep this entire team intact? Yes. The answer is unequivocally yes. You don't have to give away anything for the next 2 seasons. That means 2023, 2024, you built the Death Star, okay? You already have Tua under contract for 2024, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, where it becomes kind of tricky is in 2025, okay? If you look at their multi-year, you can see it right there. Okay, that's perfect that you have it on the screen. Look at 2025. That's where it's important, all right? You got to start doing some math. Obviously, once you get somebody like Jonathan Taylor, the rest of that group has to be kind of cheap, okay? So you're going to add on, because right there, that $2.5 million that you see right there, that's A-Chain, okay? That's in 2025. You're going to add on another maybe minimum contracts for the rest of the running back group, plus Jonathan Taylor's second year on that deal, which could be somewhere around 20. So you can start adding, right? You can get your calculator and start adding, okay? Because you have 32 signed players in 2025 with 178,634,000, right? So you got to add on 20 million essentially for the running back, okay? Which takes you to 192 and 33 players. You're going to have to add 40 for your quarterback unless you're going to push it down the trough to 2026 or 2027. But let's just say that you paid him his full amount, right? The wide receivers right there, you're going to get out from under most of that money, and you're essentially going to have 2 really expensive wide receivers because that's going to be year 1 of Jalen Waddle, okay, under contract. So that's right. Tight ends are going to have to be cheap. Offensive line, that number is going to be correct because you're going to be adding a first-round pick on the offensive line because Teron Armstead won't be there in 2025. Defensive line, you got to add 20 more. So we're already at 220. Okay? Linebacker stays pretty much the same. Secondary, you could lop off a little bit because Xavier Howard will be gone that year, 2025. Forget special teams. But in the secondary, you have to add Holland, and then on the defensive line, you got to add Phillips. Let's just make it 40 and even 40 million. That takes you to about 250 and 38 players. So let's say that the cap, if it goes up like it does every year, let's say it just goes up 10%, okay, year over year. All right, so in 2025, you're talking about something around what, like 340, 350. So you have 15 spots left and $50 million to fill those 15 spots with. Can you do it? I think so.
Yeah, you could. I mean,
it's
you're
going
not
to be
getting
tight.
too many top, not getting too many top players, but yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have stars at every single unit. You know, their backups are not going to be very good. You know, but we're talking about 2025. Just, remember that. It's 2025 that we're talking about here. For 2023, 2024, you're going to have this team plus Jonathan Taylor if you trade for him. Now, is it worth it? Possibly. But in 2025, you're essentially just talking about having a very top-heavy team. And like I said, you had to sign 15 guys with $50 million. That's cutting it awfully close. Like, you can't spend too much money anywhere else. You're going to have you're going to have 2 really expensive secondary players in Ramsey and Holland in 2025. Okay. You're going to have 1 expensive linebacker that you can use or you could just change out both guys and you just have 1 expensive linebacker because the expenditure is already there. On the defensive line, you're going to have 2 expensive defensive linemen, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips. So are you getting my drift here? You're going to have to fill in some spots with draft picks. So if you want Jonathan Taylor, you're going to have to try to steal him. You can't trade too much for him. I heard somebody say, "Oh, the equivalent of a first-round pick." No, that's not. 2 second-rounders. No, that's not what.
That's
you
too.
gotta
We
trade.
can't afford it anymore. 2 or 3 years
Yeah,
ago, 2 second rounders, yeah, because we had so many
yeah,
picks. But
yeah, but we
now, I
can't do that
mean, if we
because we're gonna
traded
need
even a
those
second
picks for
rounder,
2025. For 2025, we're gonna need those picks
yeah,
to fill in spots.
we're
On the
gonna
team.
need to have already drafted those guys and hope that we hit on at least a decent amount of them, or those
Yes.
spots are gonna be terrible, and we're gonna have a team with stars and Jags, and it's
Yes.
not gonna work. It's not gonna be like it is now, because right now we have a nice flow of talent from stars, and then the guys that are like the secondary players are really good players. So we wouldn't have that if we can't start drafting a little bit more. I don't even say better, I just say more.
Mm-hmm.
So here
Now they're
comes
gonna have to. They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to preserve some of those picks. Now, can they spread them out? Possibly, but it's gonna have. They're gonna have to steal him. Absolutely steal him. And who knows? Maybe they're gonna even have to ask him to play ball on his next contract. They're just gonna have to guarantee a ton of it, a ton of the money in 2024. Like basically, just pay him a bunch of it up front.
That's what the Niners
That's
did.
the only way I could. That's the only way I could see it happening.
When the Niners got Garoppolo, they took like a huge hit that first year or two because they had so much room to do it, and pretty much front loaded his contract.
Okay, but this is what I'm talking about here. You guys laid out all the scenarios for how this possibly could work and what exactly he does do. I'm seeing all these comments right here, and Ron, you pulled them all up here. Like Jonathan Taylor's as good as Ricky Williams. He's one of the best guys in the NFL. I'm not denying Jonathan Taylor's talent. I never said that he wasn't really good, and I didn't even say that he isn't better. He is better than Dalvin Cook. I'll take that absolutely. But by the same token, you, Ron, even you, were saying, how much does Dalvin Cook really move the needle for the Miami Dolphins offense? And even you were saying he doesn't do that much for you.
Yeah, I didn't think he moved it a lot.
Yeah, so but let's be clear. Let's be clear. Let's not compare Dalvin Cook to Jonathan Taylor. We were doing very, very honest lists of where Dalvin Cook ranked as far as running backs, and the most generous I could be was somewhere around 13th in the NFL. This guy is the best running back in football.
All right, but here's the thing:
he's a superstar.
That's fine. He's a superstar running back.
This is giving Dan Marino, Walter Payton in 1985,
or Barry Sanders in 1993.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, Jonathan Taylor is an absolute stud and a game changer. Can you imagine all those light boxes that teams like to get? The reason we ran for 205 yards against the Texans is because they were trotting out the same dumbass defense that DeMeco Ryan tried to run the entire game against the Dolphins last year when he was in San Francisco. Okay, the only thing is that Miami blew that game. Everybody talks about, Tua was bad. Tua blew a bunch of reads, but there was so much stuff to get to in that game that they just didn't get to it. Like they were ripe to get blown out of the building in that game. Okay, they ran a wheel route that they forgot to cover. That's one touchdown. Okay, we held on a run that was going to pop for 40 yards. That's another one. Okay, there was so many mistakes on the offensive side of the football against the 49ers that you could see where the mistakes were made and why, even though Tua threw for 295 yards against them, why you could see that game was on him. All right.
Yeah.
They tried out the same defense this time around. If you have Jonathan Taylor, say hello to man-to-man coverage on Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, at least on one of them, on every single snap. This could be a bonanza. So I'm telling you, if you can pull it off, it's gonna be like filling out an inside straight. It's damn near impossible to do. But if you can do it, you do it.
Duke, I see you shaking your head. I've already made my points clear, so I don't know. You tell me what you're thinking.
I'm just, when he mentioned the inside straight, because I've tried so many times to hit those and just can't. So, fun fact: if you take our top 3 running backs, assuming we get Jonathan Taylor, Our top three would be Taylor, Mostert, and A-Chain. Jonathan Taylor would be the slowest of those three.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's based on official times. So he's 0.01 seconds slower on his 40 than Mostert. But I want to say the same thing that I did with Alvin Cook. I'm all for adding talent. The difference here is the negative is you're going to have to give up draft picks, or you're going to have to give up capital and a big contract. The positives here is he's a 24-year-old running back who's probably got 4 to 5 more years left. And like Alf said, he's the best in the game. So you would be acquiring an elite player, one of the top, at worst, top 3 at his position, adding him to an offense that's already dangerous. I mean, it would be exciting to watch. So I'm for it. Now, if they're giving up, multiple firsts or something like that, that's a big no for me. But I think they can make some stuff work. And I think they could, I don't know, maybe Chris Greer can send him a player or something back. I don't know, but I think they can make it work where they could acquire him. And it also depends on, I think he would want to come here. There's a lot of teams with more cap space that could acquire him and he would work for them. I don't know. Like I said, I'm all for adding talent, so I'm cool with it. If they don't, I'm also cool with that. I understand both sides.
And let me say something. He does fit their motif as far as speed. Okay? Because, Devon A-Chain is our fastest running back at 4.3 240, but at a 4.3 240. But Jonathan Taylor ran a 4.3 940 at 230 pounds.
Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed, I was looking at some stats today in college, Taylor averaged about 1 catch per game. And in the pros, he's averaged about 2.5 catches per game. So his carries from college to pros went down, but his passing usage in the passing game has increased. So that's automatically a plus. And so you think about that route that Ahmed ran on 3rd down against the Texans, and instead of Ahmed, that's Jonathan Taylor. Now, whether or not a team lets him get that open, but based on, you look at the formations, if that's kind of a hot read and Tua hits it, I mean, you've got one of the best running backs in the league wide open on the outside. I mean, that Ahmed took it, 15, 16 yards? That may be a house call with Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, for me, the difference between Cook and Taylor is the fact Taylor's a better player, he's a younger player, and he's a longer-term option. Cook's a 1-year rental, maybe 2 if you wanted to get creative with it. But Taylor's the guy you've got on the roster for the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay. And with all that in mind, this is the point that I was about to make, is that we were talking about how Dalvin Cook's not going to get that many carries because this is still a passing offense. Are we going to say for the Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor was the offense? So how many carries are we giving Jonathan Taylor per game? How many touches are we giving Jonathan Taylor per game? And how many of those touches are we taking away from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle?
Well, hopefully none. Hopefully, and like I think we mentioned this either on last week's show or on Monday's show, about the defense just needs to get off the field. They need to average about 10 plays or so less per game. I want to see more 3-and-outs and a lot less of these, drives where it was 10 plays, 11 plays, and we only give up a field goal. That's great, but we want the offense on the field. So I don't think we need to take anything away from Tyreek and Waddle. I think we just need to add more offensive plays, and the best way to do that is to get the defense off the field. So, and it's also going to help defensively, I think, because it's going to be one of those situations like, what's the best way to defend the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, the best way is to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. What's the best way to defend the Dolphins in this case? Well, it's to keep the offense off the field.
Keep Patty Mahomes on the bench.
Yeah. So if you've got an offense where you've got a very good quarterback in Tua. You've got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. You've got Hill and Waddle on the outside. It's going to be tough to defend, and you're going to want to keep those guys on the bench. So what's the best way to do that? Well, they're going to try to run the ball. What's Miami's strength on defense right now? It's run defense. So, I mean, I think it would make everything play well to what Miami wants to do. And so I don't think we would have to give up much offensively. I think we're just going to augment. So, yeah, he's going to get the same amount of touches, just going to be more touches total offensively.
But that's assuming that your defense is going to be as strong as we're wanting it to be. For a defense that you're suggesting, Duke, we would need the same level of talent that Miami has right now, this unstoppable juggernaut of players. And we're assuming that Vic Fangio's scheme, we haven't even seen the starters play a full game against full starter capabilities kind of players.
We won't until week 1.
Right, we won't until week 1. So this is what I'm saying, though. For that kind of a defense, you're basically saying that the offense is going to spend more than 3/4 quarters of the game on the field and keeping the other team off of it because of just how incredible they are on defense. But if you're going to go out there and pay for Jonathan Taylor, yeah, you're going to enjoy it now. But there are a lot of players you're going to miss out on later. That possibly Christian Wilkins. I don't know. We don't know what those negotiations.
They'll make Christian Wilkins work.
Okay, but what's going to happen when Javon Holland comes down the pipeline? And you're going to have to get Jalen Phillips paid.
Well, I mean, Alf just really went through all those numbers.
Yeah, I know he went through all those numbers.
We're going to be able to sign the stars, but
we have to hope and pray.
Guys.
Yeah, but we have to hope and pray that none of our starters ever go down because it's immediately going to be replaced by somebody that you probably would not even want playing in the preseason.
Yeah, I think you're way overthinking this, Lewis. I think you got to think this way. They've built one hell of a team. I mean, one of the best teams I've seen in my adult life for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, they're paying again right this second. But
Dalvin
do you want
Cook
a team that's going to win one Super Bowl and then
Dalvin
go back
Cook? Yes, I do. I want a freaking team that will win one Super Bowl because it's been 51 freaking years, Lewis. 51 freaking years. I'm old and I wasn't.
You don't want to
build
build the
last
dynasty.
Time the Dolphins win the Super Bowl. No, I want to win a freaking Super Bowl. I'm not sitting here trying to think about let's build a dynasty. Let's win a Super Bowl first. We build a dynasty by doing what? Winning 3 Super Bowls in like 4 or 5 years.
Cap for life.
How about we get to 1?
Cap for life rights. Is it possible to do a rental with Jonathan Taylor? No, you can't. It has to be an extension. There is no rental.
But my whole point is, Lewis, is it's clear, like you were talking about, you're going to take away from Waddle and Hill. It's clear they want to run the ball more. So, and I think some of that is because it makes the offense harder to defend, number one, because you can still always go back plays here and there, games here and there, doing some of the stuff that was successful last year. But they want to run the ball more because it takes the pressure off the offensive line, because these guys would rather run block than pass block anyway. That's number one. Number two, it takes pressure off your quarterbacks. It puts Tua in less precarious situations as far as having to go back. I'm fine with Tua going back less and throwing the ball and us running it more. I think that's fine. If Tua's stats are a little bit less per game, I'd rather have Tua in there 17 games throwing 260 yards a game than Tua in there 10 games throwing 350 because we're just throwing it all over the field and we can't run the ball, or we're just not running it effectively. But bottom line, Dalvin Cook added to this offense. He would have made it a little better. Jonathan Taylor makes this the number one offense in the NFL. As long as Tua is back there too, it's the number one offense in the NFL if you add Jonathan Taylor. Dalvin Cook didn't make that kind of difference. And I think we can clearly see that this defense is probably going to be something pretty damn good. So if you can go in with one of the top offenses, maybe the top offense in the NFL, and let's say even a top 10 defense, which I think we can be better than that. I mean, man, that's a deep playoff run to get to a Super Bowl even. Like, that's what we're talking about here. I can't, we want to build a dynasty. It's not always going to work out perfectly like that. Let's try and win a Super Bowl now. I mean, it's been so long since we've even been. I haven't been since 84. I haven't won since 73. I mean, it's time, man. It's time. I'm ready. Let's go get Jonathan Taylor and let's get to a freaking Super Bowl.
It's been 30 years since Miami has played in an AFC championship game. I think the last one they played in was the 93 season. So it may have been 94, but still same
Lewis,
thing.
when were you born?
1993.
It was actually the 1992 season, and they played in 1993 January. So
you weren't even born yet.
30 years.
30 years since they played in an AFC championship.
And
That's
so
insane.
here's one of the things that I think we're kind of maybe glossing over a little bit is this is a good problem to have. How many years did we watch the Dolphins draft guys and then let guys walk because they really weren't worth signing to a second contract? And now we're worried about how are we going to sign all these extra guys? I think if Greer can just simply hit on a couple of offensive linemen, then I think that will be fine. I think having to rely
Did you say
on
simply though, Chris? I don't know about.
what's that?
Did you say simply hit? And I think maybe
Is that all he has to do?
hit?
well, but look, he's done well at other positions.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean,
Yeah, great. He's
done
he's awesome at drafting safeties. He's awesome at drafting wide receivers. You can make but as far as offensive linemen, name me one aside from Robert Hunt that has been a good draft pick for the Miami Dolphins with Chris Greer.
I don't think he was necessarily in charge, but I'll give him Tunsil, who at some point is going to have a statue outside of Hard Rock Stadium. So, but but think about it like this too. We're talking about the contract that we would be giving Jonathan Taylor. What if he was the pick at 30 instead of Noah Igbenogany? We'd still be having the same discussion. The difference now is, well, we have to give up some draft capital to get him. So it's not necessarily a process of acquiring him. It's how are we going to pay him? So it would be the same.
Do you think we can trade Igbenogany for Taylor?
No,
straight
I don't
up?
think you're going to trade.
I'm just kidding.
Look, here,
I do think there are some players that they would like. Ogba is one. Cedric Wilson is another. These are guys that the Dolphins would want to offload due to contract. The Colts have money to take their contracts. They fit positions of need for that team. Another player that maybe they might ask for and could be, and it depends on some things, would be Jerome Baker. I don't see that. I think Miami wants him this year, but
we need him this year.
But he could be a cap casualty in 24, and if they were pressed on the issue, I mean, I think you could talk yourself into that. But yeah, I mean, it's really just we're giving up a pick or two or whatever, or maybe even some players we don't really want to get a player that we're going to sign to a long-term contract. But if everyone had their way in 2020, we would have had the same. We'd have the same problem. How are we going to sign this guy? So, yeah, I mean, they're the experts when it comes to this. They can make the money work. They can do some things. And unfortunately, it means we're probably going to lose a player. But, I mean, that's what happens.
But we're not going to lose them this year. That's the thing.
No.
We're going to lose them in a year or two. So let's get Taylor and get to a Super Bowl.
If you get to a Super Bowl, if you win a Super Bowl, and this isn't like the Rams in a sense, because the Rams had basically a quarterback for hire, other pieces, which we've kind of done that. But if you can get there with Tua and win with Tua, you've got your franchise quarterback that you can build around, and you can maneuver his contract to what you need to do so you can build around him. So again, I'm not necessarily worried about the cap space here as much as I am what they would have to give up in terms of draft picks, because I think they can make it work. It just depends on whether Irsay or whoever wants to play ball.
And Leo's talking about we traded Hunter Long for Jalen Ramsey. Yes, we traded Hunter Long for Jalen Ramsey, but we also paid Jalen Ramsey a ton of money. It's not as simple as just, we'll just trade that player for that player, and then we hit the forced trade button in Madden. There are conditions and terms that come with this move. Jonathan Taylor is going to want to be the richest running back in NFL history, and he's probably going to want to try to be up there along with some wide receivers who have gotten paid. So it's not going to be that simple to just say, we'll just take Jonathan Taylor and we'll pay him. How much does he want? Do you know how much he wants?
I have zero clue. Alf, do you have any idea on what if we trade for him, what a contract extension, et cetera, would look like?
Well, let's just assume that he wants to be the highest paid running back in football. Okay, so let's say $18 million a year. It's Emmanuel Ogba's money. That's what they would be doing. Now, the problem is the out years, 2025, 2026. How do you make that work? Okay. As far as fitting him in right now, Emmanuel Ogba makes this year $17.1 million. 2024 is 17.8 with an out. and 2025 is $18.9 million. That's essentially Jonathan Taylor's money. Okay, so you're essentially using the same cap expenditure that you expected to have before with Agba, but you're moving it over to Jonathan Taylor. Okay, and then it's about, like I said, the out years. You got to figure out what you're gonna do with a few of these guys. For example, Jerome Baker, 2025. What's happening with him? What's happening with Bradley Chubb in 2025? You got to start figuring out all of those things, because here are the big ones. Phillips, unrestricted free agent, 2026. Okay. Forget David Long and Andrew Van Ginkel. Like those.
Yeah, Long's just on a 2-year deal, isn't he?
Yeah, those are like small. Those are small. That's small potatoes. Okay. The big ones are. I'm looking for him here. Where is he? Javon Holland is 2025. So it's 2025 and 2026. And then the last big one, we're talking about just big contracts, by the way. Okay, the last big one is Waddle, 2026. So 2026 is where you have to start outlaying a ton of money. That is 4 years into this. Actually, it'll be 3 years into Jonathan Taylor's extension. Can you draw up an extension that's going to pay him a lot of money and you're just going to cut him in 2026? Absolutely. And that's how you get Jonathan Taylor onto this team. He'll be essentially a 4-year rental. Okay. Well, actually a 3-year rental, because you got to cut him in 2026 to pay Waddle and to pay Phillips. And Holland you got to pay in 2025. But it's a safety. So, you could get by with 14, 15, $16 million contracts. Look at what Jesse Bates got with Atlanta. So, yeah, that's where it's at. And as far as like I said, the running backs, it's just A-Chain. Like that's the only guy you're paying. Devon A-Chain is the only guy that you're paying past 2023. The rest you got to get rid of. Because you can't have the whole thing is to try to keep the expenditure in the running back room roughly the same. Okay, and it's hard to do, and then actually keep like Mostert and Wilson and guys like that,
Yeah, by then, I mean, we won't though. I mean, that's definitely a spot where you're undrafted free agents, your 6th and 7th round picks.
Yeah, and this is where you trust
guys.
And this is where you trust your scouting department. Did you guys know who the hell Chris Brooks was like 6 months ago?
Never heard of him.
Well, he's making $750,000. Those are the type of guys that you're going to have to put behind Jonathan Taylor. So yeah, if you look at all the expenditures, look, you can't have an expensive backup quarterback in Mike White. So Skylar Thompson is going to have to pan out as the backup quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, because you're going to have a really expensive starting quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. So can it be done? Yeah. It's just, like there's certain guys that are coming off the books. Like, Teron Armstead is just going to naturally come off the books. Right there, that's $20.6 million. So Teron Armstead comes off the books 2025 essentially, and that money's going to go to Holland, and then you can have some left over there, and it's right there in front of you. Like it's right there in front of you. As guys expire, these guys get paid. But Jonathan Taylor, like there's a way to do a contract where he gets most of his money up front and he's gone in 2026, and you just use his money to pay the rest. So it's possible. It takes a lot of doing. Like they have to be stuck in that in Miami Gardens with Brandon Shore and Chris Greer. They're going to have to rework all their out years from 2024 all the way through 2026 to be able to do this. But it could be done. It's possible.
And if you're worried,
it has to be for cheap draft compensation. Forget this first round draft equivalency that they came out with. Forget about that, because people read that as either a first round pick or 2 second-round picks. Forget about that. It has to be something much cheaper than that, because they need those draft picks.
And your question about how he would be used in Miami. Well, if you look at it like I was talking about in a long-term perspective, it doesn't matter if he gets 12 carries a game in 2023 or whatever else like that, because he is going to be sharing the ball with Mostert and A-Chain and maybe Jeff Wilson if he's still here. In 2025, those guys won't be here. Run him 20 times a game at that point. Who cares? You'll have your top two guys with A-Chain and Taylor. That's when you run the wheels off of him. You can save him now by letting him get a little bit less usage, although you want to use your best players. And like I said, then you do it when you're getting ready to get out of that contract. So yeah, I mean, I think fans would probably freak out. It's like, oh, they're only using him 12 times a game, 15 times a game, and they're paying him all this money. Well, in 2 years, that's not going to be the case. So you still get the benefit now, and then you can, get benefit later and worry about that stuff then.
I mean, he's got a nose for the end zone too. When I think about some of the issues, one of the issues we had in the red zone was not being able to rush, not being able to get it in on the run, third downs, fourth downs, all those things. Think about so many of the problems we had last year. McDaniel feeling more comfortable running on those shorter yards, running on a 3rd and 2 or even a 3rd and 3. Like he didn't even want to do it. He didn't trust the offense to convert. I think this year he'll trust it more even as it's built, but you add Jonathan Taylor, he really trusts it. And then, I mean, I'm telling you, you start tricking teams into thinking, oh man, Miami's running the ball. We got to stuff the run. We got to stuff the run. Then you could start throwing in the stuff you were doing last year with the deeper stuff in the middle of the field because the linebackers are going to be cheating up. I mean, what are the Chargers going to do? They really going to sit there and see what Miami's done in the preseason? Then we add Jonathan Taylor and say, no, we're going to go ahead and cheat the linebackers all the way back like we did last year. And we're going to stop Waddle and Hill. And I mean, we're going to be able to run it all over them.
And that is a key point because if you listen to what they said after the practices this week, Tua threw the 2 interceptions on that first day. And, the linebacker, I think it was Christian Harris, said,
yeah,
he'd watched them run that play last year. He just trusted his drop. He kind of knew where Tua was going to throw it. So the linebackers were kind of doing that. You may have seen a little bit of that in the game. That will not happen with Jonathan Taylor.
And if it does, it'd be a mistake for that defense.
Exactly.
Get run all over.
So a lot of these times we'll see a play that it's shaped like an RPO, but it's really just a standard play action. But on some of those RPOs, Tua's going to get to where he can read what those linebackers are doing if they're trying to cheat back like that and hand the ball off. And you've got a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the best in his position. That's going to be a mistake on their part. So now they're going to have to truly honor the RPO, and that's where it gets fun. So yeah, adding him will definitely, especially with a renewed dedication to running the ball, you just add him to the mix, and it's going to be so tough to defend because what you thought you could defend from last year's tape, now you can't.
Lewis, your thoughts? Have you changed your mind? Are you on it?
No.
You're on mute, by the way.
Oh, I'm not on mute, and no, I haven't changed my mind.
Okay, well,
look,
you will after they win the next 4 Super Bowls in a row.
Dynasty.
That sounds like a dynasty, but I feel like you need a roster full of players. There's regardless of how
we got players, man.
Regardless of how we try to structure this, the Dolphins are still $30 million in the hole in this up after the season. Are they not? Has that changed?
Yeah, but that's Fugazi cap machinations. You could snap your fingers and get under the cap for next season.
Plus, that's not even in that's using this year's cap, not next year's cap. That's what they do.
Yeah, and that's using the contracts as structured currently.
Leo asked, fast forward to the end of this season, do the Fins regret the trade and contract for Bradley Chubb? If he doesn't perform, I would, but
you won't. If Jalen Phillips has 16 sacks this year and Bradley Chubb has 10, guess what? Like about 8 of those 16 sacks probably belong to Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, because we already saw Jalen Phillips last year. The moment Bradley Chubb got there, even though Chubb didn't do a lot,
he took off.
Yeah, Phillips took off because they no longer could just focus on him. They had to focus on both. So, yeah, I think having those guys on the ends all year, then mixing it in with Ogba. Well, I know Ogba, they're doing the stand-up thing, but maybe he's going to put his hand down some, etc. So he's not really quite a full replacement of those guys, but he kind of is. I think that's going to be huge for the defense this year.
If you want me to change my mind on Jonathan Taylor, you are going to have to make it the greatest bargain that I've ever seen in my life. Like, I thought Hunter Long and Hunter Long and a third for Jalen Ramsey was a steal. You're going to have to get even better than that. For real. You're going to have to do us a favor. You're going to have to take Cedric Wilson off our hands in order to convince me. Like, maybe Cedric Wilson and a second rounder is about the only thing I would be willing to give up for Jonathan Taylor if you're going to pay him a bazillion.
A deal. Bet.
Well, is it a deal for the Colts?
Let's do it.
Is it a deal for the Colts?
It could be. He's a running back. Remember, their owner said that running backs are worthless.
Yeah, they're trading him because they don't think he's worth that much. And they don't want to pay him.
Is an egomaniac, and he is going to have every single Colts fan slamming on his mansion door if he ends up trading Jonathan Taylor, their only source of offense for the past 3 seasons, and if they go ahead and he makes that trade.
They can't talk out both sides of their mouth. You want to move on because you don't want to pay him. So therefore you're saying you don't find the value in him, but then you want to say, but we want a first, but you said you don't find the value in him. So you're not going to get a first.
Irsay blabs more than he should, and everybody knows this.
Irsay traded for Vontae Davis for a second round pick. Irsay,
and it blew up in his face, didn't it?
He's a drunkard.
So here's an idea, and I posted this on Twitter. If they want a first round pick that bad, what
first round equivalent? They didn't say they want a first round pick. They want the equivalent of.
Well, how about Miami sends them a first round pick in exchange for Taylor? And you can throw in whatever.
I think Mike McDaniel might bang down Chris Greer's door. And why do you keep trading my first round picks?
But here we go. A first round pick for Taylor and their second round pick. And you can add in all the fluff to make it work however else. But think about it like this. You add Taylor, Miami's picking 28th or lower. Indianapolis is probably going to pick 36th or 33rd to 36th based on what they're expected. If you look at the draft value chart from Draft Tech, they have Miami right now currently at picking 25, and they have Indianapolis picking 3rd overall, which is 35th in the second round. So let's say Miami does very well. They make it to the Super Bowl, win or lose. They make it to the Super Bowl. Their 31st pick. Indianapolis has that 35th pick. Would you drop down 4 spots to pick up Taylor? I would.
Yeah.
Indy gets their first round pick, and Miami moves down a few slots and gets a elite running back. I mean, I don't know if they could make that magic work, but I would take that in a heartbeat because they get what they want. It looks like they win, but Miami doesn't really move that far.
I mean, I don't have any argument against the logic of Jonathan Taylor being a Miami Dolphin. All I can say is that I don't feel like that it's worth trying to go through all the jumping of hoops in order to make this somehow work in the future. Like, if you're going to win right this second, okay, enjoy it. I will be celebrating along with the rest of you, but I'm going to be looking at the rest of this trying to figure out, okay, but I don't want to give up X, Y, and Z player, and I don't really think I can make that math work.
Lewis, it's like, man, I don't know, man. I just can't get around this thinking. It's like a poor man who doesn't want to take $100,000 because he's afraid he won't get $3 million in 3 years, but all he has is $10 right now. Take the $100,000. Maybe you still get $3 million later on, but you got $10 right now, Lewis. When you didn't want to take the 10,000 with Dalvin Cook.
Look, it's better. It's more like this.
22 freaking years, dude. Enough.
It's more like this. For the next 3 years, I'm going to pay you $100,000 a year salary for the next 3 years, or I can give you 300,000 lottery tickets. Which one do you want?
Take the 100 a year.
I'm going to take the sure money, of course.
Oh, but if you have 300,000 lottery tickets, you could win 50 million, 100 million.
Taylor's the sure money, and Your thought process, I think, is hoping we hit it big later, but we ain't hit nothing yet. We
No,
ain't
I
even want to
think
play.
that we were already going to hit
22
big,
years.
and all we're doing is we're just
We're-
adding. Like the sundae is already made. Adding more whipped cream to it is gonna
Gonna make it better.
I don't like
And-
that.
and look,
Yes, we
No,
might
this-
be
this is
fat in
serving
3
it-
years, but we're gonna
this
enjoy
is
that
serving
Sunday
it-
right now.
Now, this is serving the sundae in a golden chalice, is what this is.
Yeah. So think on it like this: if Tua is who we think he is and who we
Who we
expect
know
him
he
to be, yeah. If he's that guy, it's not going to matter 3 years from now. I mean, we're going to have our franchise quarterback, and we will find the pieces. I mean, can you name? I can name one of Patrick Mahomes' receivers right now. I don't know the rest of them. I know that one guy got injured that played for Clemson, but I can't remember his name. But Sky Moore was their first round pick, I think, last year.
Mhm.
I couldn't tell you who their other people are. So if you've got a quarterback that can make others better, and we're kind of spoiled at this point because we have two elite guys at wide receiver, but eventually Hill's going to retire. Waddle's still going to be here, and if he keeps up the pace he's going to be an all-time great receiver, not just for the Dolphins, but in the league. So yeah, you can surround him with other pieces. You can find that guy. You can find a guy like Ezukama and play him. Braxton Berrios, cheap player that you can play him because you've already got the stud positions. I mean, I think we look at it like, well, we've got two stud wide receivers. We have to have two studs. Everybody wants the stud tight end. You got to have good players at certain positions, and everybody else, you just need to have good players. You don't have to have the super duper stars, high paid players. And you can argue that running back is one of those positions. But my stance on these type of players is you don't pay top money to certain positions unless you're getting a top 3 to 5 player at that position. So is Jonathan Taylor a top 3 to 5 player at that position? Yes. So I know the history with signing running backs to big contracts hasn't a good history recently, but it's a gamble that I think you have to take.
Look at it this way. Look at it this way. Whose roster is the best in the NFL right now? Like
that's awesome.
I'll ask Lewis. I'll get to it. I'll ask Lewis first. Lewis, who do you think has the best roster in the NFL right now?
From top to bottom?
Yeah, top to bottom, from everywhere. The best roster in the NFL right now.
I mean, I would have to argue, and this is completely, I have to have more research done into it to give a more educated opinion, but just off the top of my head, I would have to say Miami.
Okay,
That's
besides Miami. Besides Miami.
The Jets.
Look at the screen.
Okay, and that's what you guys are saying.
Alf, you
asked
and
me.
I literally have the same brain because before you said that, I had looked at this site and said, "Who's probably got the best roster in the league, and how many superstars do?"
Yeah,
we think
but you
they
know
have?
what? They have
That
Brock
was what my
Purdy as their
mindset
quarterback,
was.
and I don't list that, and that disqualifies.
Well, they
them from my
have.
list.
You know who that roster has?
Christian McCaffrey.
The highest. Yeah, the highest paid running back in football.
and
That's
a
that
seventh
roster
round
has.
rookie, Mr. Irrelevant, as their quarterback, who I'm not convinced is some superstar in the making. Tom Brady reincarnated. I'm not buying it. That's why I don't put the 49ers up there for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
dude,
but
the
Brock
49ers
Purdy is
have
not
probably the
making
best
too
roster.
much more. Brock
Yeah.
Purdy is not making too much more than what Tua's making, for that matter.
Yeah, but
You're
for
talking about
money.
a couple of million here, a
You
couple of
asked
million
me
there.
who had the best roster. You didn't ask
Yeah,
me
the
about who's
49ers.
getting paid.
And
Yeah,
I'm
the
telling you,
49ers
look
probably,
how
maybe the
they
Eagles.
built that roster. So they're spending. So they figured out a way to have the highest paid running back in football and still have the best roster in football.
Yeah, with the most top 100 guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means that the numbers work. If
Yeah, you can make it
do
work.
it right. Yeah, you just have to do it right though.
And another thing too, I think what's interesting is I know this sounds silly. I would have thought that McDaniel's thought process was, no, we don't need star running backs because in San Fran we had one of the best running games and we were just able to scout guys and find guys and start kind of grooming guys early on, like years before, like he did with Jeff Wilson, like he did with A-Chain, really kind of eyeballing guys years ahead of time. But then he saw Shanahan go out and trade a boatload for Christian McCaffrey. And I know that McDaniel had to notice that. McDaniel even said outwardly that he was surprised how much McCaffrey went for. But I know he saw his old master there go and do that. Go and make that move last year in the middle of the season. I think that is something that caught his eye and makes him think, man, I'd like to do that. However, we know this is a situation where Grier has final say on personnel. I mean, we know that for a fact. Not that they're not doing this as a team, but Grier has final say. My question is, does Grier think it's going to be worth it? That's the answer I don't have. I truly don't know. I'll bet McDaniel would be willing to. I don't know. He's not going to part with that first, but a second, I think he would. I just don't know what Grier's thought process is. I truly can't even really speculate. I just don't know.
Yeah, for all this orthodoxy of how Shanahan's offense is supposed to be or built or whatever, Kyle Shanahan essentially told you he can change his mind by trading for Christian McCaffrey. But look at Kyle Shanahan's best offense ever, which was that Atlanta Falcons team that lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
When Matt Ryan won the MVP.
When Matt Ryan, go look at that offense. That is the best offense Kyle Shanahan has ever had. Go look it up. You can see that offense and see if anything catches your eye as far as compared to this team. That team had 2 superstar wide receivers, had an MVP quarterback, and go look at their 2 running backs. It was Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Now look at the yardage that those 2 guys essentially put up together. Just those 2 guys. And that tells you all you need to know. They essentially had a superstar at running back because those 2 guys combined for 2,000 yards from scrimmage. So is that similar to what we would have? I think so. Just compare that roster to ours. I think it's right there. Hopefully we don't blow a 28-3 lead.
So I guess we've gone over everything we can discuss at this point. We're already 57 minutes in. I've been roasted here by you guys. I've been roasted in the comment section. I've been roasted on Twitter. I've been roasted in my last Vin's Nation episode. So it's pretty clear that I'm in the minority here. But you know what, man? At the end of the day, if the Dolphins make the trade, it's not like I'm going to look at it and say, oh, Jonathan Taylor, I didn't want Jonathan. I'm going to be excited, just like everybody else.
I would have been excited if we had gotten Dalvin Cook. Like, I would have been happy with that. But I will have to say,
wait, hold on. I got you on something. You called me a liar.
But I said I'd be happy, but I wasn't big on trying to like pay him a lot of money and go get him.
Hey, by the way, the 49ers haven't paid Nick Bosa yet, and the Chiefs haven't paid Chris Jones yet. Let's just go get those 2 guys too.
Let's do it. Let's make the trade.
Alf's playing Madden over here. I don't know how that.
The Dolphins are playing Madden. If they sign Jonathan Taylor, they're playing Madden, man. And everybody's gonna be like, dude, the salary cap is BS. It doesn't count. It doesn't mean anything.
You just got to be really, really good about it. And Brian Shore, fortunately, is very, very good about it.
Cap for Life asks, Alf, is it true?
That's not true.
Is not true.
That is not true. That is not true.
Who is? I meant to ask before. Who is Jonathan Taylor's agent? Is there any kind of Miami connection?
You're asking that like if you already know the answer to it. He's a Dolphin fan. Malky Kawhi. He's a Dolphin fan. And he spent all day yesterday liking every single tweet that tied Jonathan Taylor to the Dolphins and ignored every other tweet that tied Jonathan Taylor anywhere else. Yeah, he's a Dolphin fan and he knows Mike McDaniel well, and he's a Dolphin fan. It's just as simple as that.
Tamper.
So, he's gonna put the finger on the scale if it comes down to it.
I mean, if he can put the finger on the scale and make it so that it's not going to hurt the Dolphins as far as the assets, as far as how much they have to give up, you won't see me complaining. You won't. I'm not in the bandwagon because a lot of people are talking about how get Jonathan Taylor at all costs. I'm not in that camp. I just can't. I cannot do it because I see the value in keeping a lot of our core players and keeping them happy. Because it's not just as simple because what Duke said earlier. All Chris Grier has to do is hit on a couple offensive linemen. I don't trust Chris Grier to hit on offensive linemen.
That's true.
Every single offensive lineman, aside from Tunsil, who is a Texan now, and gave us all this. He set the path. to us being able to do all this amazing stuff. Yes, but
Greer set the path with the trade.
Yeah, but
he's a free agent. He's a free agent in 2025, which means Jonathan Taylor could come off the books in 2025, and then we give his money to Laramie Tunsil.
I say we do.
Go ahead and build a statue.
I say we get a 4-team trade going.
This is
Miami, Miami, Indianapolis, Portland, and the Heat. And let's get Dame and Jonathan Taylor over here together on the same day in the same trade.
Okay, so which football player goes to Portland?
Championship. I don't care. I don't care what Portland and Indianapolis get. I just want Jonathan Taylor and Dame.
They get nothing and like it.
Yeah, that's right. You get nothing and you like it.
I have seen an idea about how. Do you think Chris Greer kind of already knew this was going to happen and therefore didn't put in a big contract offer to Dalvin Cook?
I was partly wondering if maybe this is why we were holding on to the $13 million this whole time too. But what do you think?
Well, now Christian Wilkins is grouchy. He wants his contract.
He'll get it. Alf, what do you think? Do you think that maybe this might have been, or something like this is why they were hanging on to the $13 million?
Well, this is why you hoard cap space when you can, and that's why they were holding on to that $13 million, and why they held the line on Dalvin Cook, and why I kept hearing consistently that they would not go past a year for Dalvin Cook, and they would not add any new money, because usually what happens is like, hey man, you're really short on salary. How about you just put an option here for a second year, and you can make it up to us next year in guarantees. And the Dolphins are like, no, we're not committing anything past this year. So they decided it was worth keeping the money instead of committing more of it for next year. So if they're hoarding money, what are they hoarding money for next year? Well, to pay all these guys, to pay Christian Wilkins, to potentially start paying a Jonathan Taylor. So
Connor Williams.
Connor Williams, first of all, he has to stop snapping the ball like that. You know what? Part of me thinks that it's a conspiracy that they keep him at center, so he snaps the ball terribly one more time, and then they say, "Look, you're not worth the extension. You're not worth the money. You're not worth the money. Or we're moving you to left guard now." So yeah, that money's going to be put to good use next year, as they're going to use that money to pay a Christian Wilkins. Remember, all that money, all that cap money rolls over. So they were smart to keep it, and now they can play with it a little bit.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, go get Jonathan Taylor.
Go get Jonathan Taylor. Go trade for him. Let's win the Super Bowl.
To go back to a previous show you guys had, if the Dolphins do acquire Jonathan Taylor, there's your fantasy pick from the Dolphins at the running back position.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I would say, look, anybody who's watching and you're a fantasy football player, Dolphins went from having 2 draftable wide receivers to buyer beware on Jalen Waddle, because, look, Tyreek Hill is always going to get his targets no matter who the hell is running the football. But it's obvious from everything that they've done this offseason. First of all, the offensive line, Chris Kaufman was talking about this on OnlyFans earlier today, and we talked about this on the podcast last night. The offensive line is built to run block. They signed a bunch of run blocking tight ends. They have an expensive fullback, for Christ's sakes. By the way, you know who that fullback used to block for in college, right?
Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, so the team is kind of built for that. Now, Tyreek Hill will get his targets, because it's like they're kind of like a package deal, because they're going to play off of each other. Tyreek Hill is going to demand the respect that's going to allow Jonathan Taylor to run between the tackles, and Jonathan Taylor is going to command the respect that's going to allow Tyreek Hill to occasionally get one-on-one coverage that he can beat for a long touchdown, right? So that's where it's going as far as fantasy draft. I think you probably lay off of Jalen Waddle, but you absolutely want Tyreek Hill in the first round. Like, if they got Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill becomes, because look, maybe forget about the 1,700 yards, but what did he have last year? 8 touchdowns? That's what he had, right? 8?
7.
You might be able to tack on you might be able to tack on another 5 to 8 more, and it could be 16 touchdowns. So, yeah, Tyreek Hill remains a first-round draft pick. But, yeah, that's the offense. The offense goes from centered around Waddle and Tyreek Hill to Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. There's still 1 week left of preseason. There's some weeks off before everything all comes together. So we'll go ahead and end it here. Thank you all so much for listening. And once again, if you haven't already done so, make sure you check out our friends over at You Break Wheel Fix. If you need to get your wheels fixed up, whether it's powder coating, rim refinishing, wheel polishing, or you got all sorts of options. And if you just want to give your ride a new look, they also do custom jobs. So you have a lot of really good stuff to look out. Check out this Dolphins-based wheel. You can get that from You Break Wheel Fix. Reach out to 305-748-0112 or online at youbreakwheelfix.com and go to prizepicks.com. Use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up. Get this promo code 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and take advantage of that free Dak Prescott square. It's basically free money at this point. So get on over there and get started winning today. All right, that's going to be it. I got to go record Fins Nation now. So I'm going to leave you all here. We will see you all next week for another episode of The Pulse of Fins Nation. Good night, everybody.